Hey everyone, good morning. Jill Ortiz here, NASM certified personal trainer, group fitness instructor, and athletics coach at World Gym Brewster. I'm here today to talk about squats, squat form, techniques, and all things squats. And so the first thing I want to talk about is safety, right? Safety is of utmost importance to us in our fitness, especially because if we're putting in all the work, we don't want to injure ourselves. And a lot of times that injury comes from poor technique. And so the first thing is I want you to know that if you have had any kind of surgeries or problems with your knees, make sure you're consulting with your doctor first before you do squats. When you're doing squats and lunges especially, those exercises put a lot of pressure on your knee joints, right? And it's because you're using your whole body weight and moving at that knee joint, and that can be a lot of pressure for somebody who does not have the strength in the knee joint or the mobility. And so make sure that it's okay with your doctor if you've had any former issues, that they're okay with you doing these workout types, right? And then I want you to know too that a lot of times we need to make sure that we have proper mobility in our joints, mobility and strength around our joints, and that pain in your joints is not necessarily normal, right? So when we do a workout, we never say, wow, that was a great workout. My knees are sore, right? Your knee joints shouldn't be sore. Muscles get sore when we work them. So we don't want your joints to feel sore. If so, we want you to be icing, maybe seeing a PT, going to a doctor to see if there's something wrong. So never have pain in your joints, right? You can have soreness in your muscles, but no pain in your joints. So what I want to talk about is form first, right? When we're doing squats, I want to make sure that you're lined up properly. And sometimes when you're at home and not with your trainer, you want to make sure that you're doing this maybe to start in front of a mirror so that you can check out your form and make sure that you're doing these things right. Now, when I teach group fitness, again, I'm a stickler for form. And so you'll often hear me talk about placement of your knees and where you're putting the weight. So let's talk about that first. When you're doing squats, you don't ever want to have your weight on the front of your feet. You always want to have your weight back in your heels. So it's a good place to start is if you're standing here watching, is just shift your weight to the front of your feet, right? Towards your toes. You're kind of leaning forward, and then shift your weight back. And you should be able to wiggle your toes up off the ground when you're doing squats, right? If you're up here, then you're putting all of your weight forward on those joints, right? And so we want to make sure that the shoulders are lined up with the hips and that when you're coming down, you're not leaning forward, okay? So it's important that when we squat, it's kind of like we're sitting down to a chair or the toilet and you're sitting back and you're putting your butt down, right? Okay, so that's one thing, is just where your weight is. The second thing is where you are moving to. Now you want to make sure that your knees are not coming in front of your toes, because that's going to show you that all of that weight is now hinging on those knee joints here. So again, sit back. When we come down, we don't want the knees to come in front of those toes, right? Let's talk about the feet and the tracking of the knees. This is something too that's really important to maybe watch in front of a mirror before you start doing these without a mirror. When we're doing squats, we'll talk about different foot placement, but I want to make sure that no matter what, when you're going down, that your knees are tracking over the big toe, and that your knees, as you come down in a squat, don't come in. This is the worst place to be. If anything, I'd rather you push them out, safer for the knee joint. But again, if we're going like this, we don't want to be going down in a squat like this. We really want to have the knees staying right over the toes. Now, when you're first starting out, that might mean that you don't have the mobility to be going low in your squats. So if you're doing good, and then down here, you start to see the knees move, then right now, this is where you want to be for your squat. You don't want to overdo it, right? So just moving through a squat, we want to make sure that we have great form, that we're sitting the hips back, coming down, that the knees are tracking properly, that we're keeping our chest upright, okay, and coming up. So just some air squats. The first form, this is really great for warming up and getting ready for some squats. Your feet are about hip distance apart, and you're just gonna come down, sitting back into the heels, right? So that you can wiggle your toes at the bottom. Now this is also good to start getting the ankle mobility. Sometimes we can't go down very far because we just don't have the mobility in our ankles. So to be stretching out your ankles, working on mobility is really great. Also, maybe at the end of your workout, when you're warm, you want to start stretching your hips too, because that's a really important part of squatting too. And you can get lower in your squats when you have more mobility in your hips. So maybe at the end of your workout, you start working on, we could call it a catcher's pose or a goddess pose, whatever you're more comfortable saying, and sitting down and opening up the hips and even coming as low down here and kind of pressing open. This is a really great thing to do at the end of each of your workouts, just to work on that hip mobility. People might ask, you know, how far down is it? How far down can I go in a squat? And there's controversy over it. Some people say don't go down past your knees, right? Don't let your butt go past your knees. But we've learned that that's okay as long as you have that the hip mobility and the ankle mobility, right? To come down and up, okay? So let's talk about a couple techniques, right? The first one, we were just warming up with our front squat, right? Front squat, feet are facing forward, they're right under your hips. You're literally just sinking down and coming up. And what I love about squats too, is it's not like bicep curls or triceps or, you know, abs or the low back. You're working all of these muscles. You're working your quads, your glutes, and your hamstrings all at once. But you have to be conscious of them. So when you're coming down, you're really using your hamstrings to control that movement down, right? As you come up, you want to use your glutes, your quads to stand tall. And I always say, squeeze the booty at the top, right? So we're coming down, standing tall, and squeezing. And you can see my hips kind of come forward too, right? Sit down, come up, squeeze. All right, so let's introduce a little bit of weight. So what the weight does is it adds resistance, right? It helps you strengthen. So the first ones were more about mobility and stability, right? Now we're working a little bit more on strength. So just holding these, a front squat, or sometimes we call them a suitcase squat, kind of like you're putting suitcases down on the ground. Same exact form. The feet are hip distance, the toes are pointed straight ahead, you're right under the hips. You're gonna sit the butt back, keeping the chest up, coming down only to where the knees are still tracking over those toes, and standing up, using those hamstrings, using the glutes, using the quads, and squeezing at the top, right? Down and up, down and up. Now I can feel my heart rate rising, right? It's because I'm using the largest muscle groups in my body, and those ones, when worked, burn the most calories. They raise your heart rate up. So it's actually cardio too. It gets your heart rate up. So again, with the weights, holding them right below the shoulders, sinking down, butt goes back, weights in the heels, stand up and squeeze. Down, up and squeeze. And again, based on your mobility, you might be able to go lower than somebody else, right? And how your knees are doing. Second one, we've got a sumo squat. This means that your feet are wider, right? Like a sumo wrestler. Your toes are pointed out. This is going to get more of that inner thigh and a little bit more of that hip mobility. You can put your arms wherever you're comfortable, whether you like them on your hips, right? A little heavier. They feel a little heavier if you let them hang down, coming down and up. Or if you want to work a little bit more on upper body, and you want to hold the weight up here, there's a little bit more resistance too. And you can always come down and up. And again, it's all about the hip mobility. It's about practice. It's about making sure that your knees, again, are tracking over those toes, coming down, squeezing, right? So you want to squeeze through the inner thighs, squeeze the glutes at the top, right? So let's try a couple here. Down and up. Down and up. Good. You can also hold your weights right here, right? If you like them here. It's all based on your preference, right? If you want, you can bring some more upper body movement in as well, right? To get a compound movement, which is gonna just raise that heart rate even higher and make it more efficient as a total body workout. All right, let's talk about Goblet Squat. It's got a little bit more resistance in the front. You can use a heavier weight. So if I had my 30 or 40 pound dumbbell, this would be a good one. Goblet Squat, you're holding the weight underneath. Your feet again are pointed forward, right? And you're gonna sit the butt back, and it just puts more weight here, and it makes it harder to do the exercise. So you're working more strength by adding weight in front here, right? A good rule of thumb to know that you're not putting the chest forward is to make sure that that weight stays against the chest. So if I put my weight forward, right? If I'm pitching forward, which we don't want to do, then you'll see the weight hangs down, right? If I stay upright, the weight will stay against my chest, down and up, right? You want that weight to stay upright against your chest so you know you've got great form. All right, so those were just a couple different squat techniques today. I hope that this helped you in some way. Keep your proper form when you're doing your exercises at home until we can be back together. Take care, everyone.